So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
For our deep dive this week, we're going to take a look at Donald Trump's inauguration and his first few very eventful days in office. After moving his inauguration indoors because of extreme cold, something Mainers can relate to this week, Donald Trump gave a speech laying out his vision for America through his second term. The speech was less dystopian than the one he gave in 2017, but it still laid out a clear contrast. Now, most inaugural addresses offer an optimistic vision for the nation, and there were a few lofty passages, but much of his message was aimed at what Trump sees as the failures of his predecessors, particularly Joe Biden.
From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government.
And President Trump had much more to say about what he believes is America's destiny.
The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
Well, we have plenty to unpack here. Let's start with you, Phil. First, was this speech what you were hoping for, expecting from Donald Trump as he starts a new term?
Actually, it sounded like the campaign speech that was polished up and expanded upon. I didn't hear anything in the inaugural address that I didn't hear during the campaign trail. What I did find interesting was this expansion, this look over the horizon, follow me, we're going to make things better than you could have imagined. And since that inaugural address, yesterday he had three icons of technology talking about how they're going to make AI the heartbeat of the world based here in America, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about that vision, and I suspect there's more ideas to come.
Ethan?
I'm surprised. You heard that Manifest Destiny stuff during his campaign? Because he never talked about any of that stuff until after he got elected.
That's certainly, phrasing it that way is certainly new, and we'll have to see how literally he means that.
He was not talking.
That's a loaded term, which means we're going to grab some more territory.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I think in 100 years we've had a president who's been saying we want to go expand the borders of the United States. If Putin had said something like that, you'd be all over him. But today you seem to be okay with it, and we're like, wait a minute, that to me is very, and the dystopian stuff, I mean, so much of it was untrue, right? I mean, that's where you get frustrated with Trump. He stands up there and says, I won the vote of the youth by 36%. Well, he lost the vote with youth, right? He just lives in this weird universe that people seem to forgive him because they hear something that they may like. But it was unfortunate, the speech. He made it about himself, as he often does, about his prosecutions, about being chosen by God. That's scary language, I think, for a lot of people in America, and I don't think he did himself any favors. The Manifest Destiny stuff is something I hope all of us, Republicans included, keep in check. Going to take the Panama Canal by force, not okay.
Well, so in other words, what he may have been doing is telling the people who didn't vote for him, you might as well get on board because I'm speaking to my supporters here, Phil. I mean, really, this was kind of red meat for the people who love Donald Trump.
Sure, and the journey that he took through 2 assassination attempts, 2 impeachments, all of the lawsuits, to come back and win all 7 swing states, the popular vote, although by a small margin, emboldened and empowered him. And I think the change that I'm seeing unfold before us is that what used to be Washington going to the communities and telling them how to live has now turned around and said, we are the community of America. We're telling you, the government, what powers we're going to let you exercise. A very different
What are you talking about? He stood up there and just signed, we'll get into these, but dozens and dozens of executive orders implementing federal policies on states and Americans, right? This was not the federal government saying we're getting out of your way. This is the federal government coming and saying, we are coming in. If you want to build wind power in your state, sorry, you're done. If you're an immigrant who came across the border and asked for asylee status, we're going to kick you out. If your family's trying to get here, you're gone. If you're an LGBTQ youth, you no longer have protection. So this is the federal government coming into our lives. So I don't know what speech, I think you're projecting something onto him that really wasn't there. I'm not sure what you're referencing.
So the executive orders are just that. They're orders from the executive branch of the government saying, here are the policies and strategies that I'm going to implement within the power I have within the Constitution. Congress hopefully will suit up and get on the field and do their job for a change and either support legislation that memorializes it or overturns it.
Well, let's dig into a couple of those. Ethan, pick one or two of those executive orders that really resonated with you, either in a positive way or, I'm going to guess, probably a negative way.
Not too many resonated in a positive way. I'd say the two that they're going to be the most impactful on Maine and Maine residents. One is around the wind power stuff. Obviously, we have a big wind power project that the legislature democratically passed. The people of Maine are very strongly in support of, and Trump has now put some tremendous roadblocks in place that will probably delay the implementation of that, which of course makes climate change worse. The others are really around immigration. This is going to be very destructive to Maine, to a lot of the country. He has set in place, he's now, as we've talked about, he's not just trying to stop illegal immigration. He has put executive orders in place to stop legal immigration, right? The policies where people could come across the border legally and apply for asylee status, over. Refugee program, suspended. The program where they had in place where people who were flying into the country to try to get this status, legally, over. So he's setting a policy before he begins deporting people, really terrifying for Maine people, I think.
He's also raising a constitutional issue, and by saying we're no longer going to have birthright citizenship. You can't just cross the border, have a child, and that child becomes a citizen. Phil, what sticks out for you?
Well, I think back to the immigration that, Ethan, I'm on the other side of that conversation. We already have who knows how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who didn't go through a port of entry. They just snuck across the border. We've got to identify them and make sure that they're not here to do harm by us. We have 300,000 children that are in America. We have no idea where they are or what plight they're in. We need to address them. We know there are people here who have been convicted of murder and rape and robbery and other things. We need to identify them and deport them. I think what you're going to find is that the first order of business is, let's make sure that who's here legally is here. Then let's start an orderly immigration process. We all want people to come here legally.
But he stopped.
Legally.
But okay, Phil, you've said that before. But he just signed executive orders. You saw them stopping legal immigration.
Stopping. Let's
a policy
figure out who's here first.
To what end? But let's just step back for a second, right? Why do you want to get rid of so many immigrants or stop immigrants from coming in?
Nobody wants to get rid of immigrants.
But
Nobody.
you
need to come through the front door.
But they did.
Legally. If you didn't, I'm sorry, you have to leave.
Why? To what end?
Because you broke the law.
Okay,
These are laws that are on the books.
What
it's not
end?
The president signing an executive order. He's implementing existing law passed by Congress,
These people
signed by
aren't
the
here
president.
Isn't this partly because
They
of the
aren't here
failure of
illegally.
Congress to enact meaningful immigration reform?
Well, Congress tried
it
to.
leaves the president in a position to say,
Sure.
okay, I'm going to fix it.
Right. I mean, Congress tried to pass it, but Donald Trump stepped in and said, no, don't pass that. We don't want that bill in place, even though it would have done it. So Joe Biden went forward and created a policy. Look, a year ago, 250,000 people are coming across the border in 1 month. Over the course of the last year, 4,000 a month are coming across the border because Joe Biden put in place a legal immigration process. Donald Trump just suspended that. So I come back to the question of, why do you want to get rid of immigrants, right? Is it to protect American jobs? Because that doesn't work, right? We know that's not what happens. Is it to reduce the crime rate? We know that doesn't work either because immigrants actually commit crimes at lesser rates than U.S.-born citizens. So when we keep coming back to why are you trying to stop immigration in this country, it has to be about something very unfortunate, which is political or racism. That's why people are responding so strongly.
That's outrageous, Ethan. Outrageous.
But tell me why.
Nobody wants to deny anyone who wants to legally immigrate to our country. We want you. We welcome you. We need you.
Then why did he end the refugee program? He just suspended the refugee program,
well, that's
which
the
is
difference.
legal
Ending
entry.
and suspending are two different things.
Okay,
we're
why did he-
suspending until we can figure out what we're dealing with already in our country, who's here, who's friend or
It's
foe.
not the problem, though. The refugee program,
Go ask
George
80%
Bush.
of Americans how they feel about deporting people who came into our country illegal.
It is a huge part of how Donald Trump got elected.
It is a huge part of it, and that still doesn't make it right? And you keep saying, and I think a lot of people...
It is right to come in and break our laws, to break into our country, and then claim that we somehow have to support you?
No, because
that's exactly what's
our
happening.
laws allow you to be here, Phil. They allow you to be here.
You need to come through a port of entry.
They are, and he ended that
Not
program.
if you cross the border with sneaking
No,
through
yes.
the
If you cross the border and you declare asylee status, when the Cubans were coming from Cuba and rushed up on our shores and conservatives across the country cheered, that is exactly the same process of what happens today, right? They come onto the U.S. sand in Florida and they declare asylee status. They now have legal status to protect themselves from what's going on in their country, the repression, the crime, the economic situation, until a court decides. That's what's going on now.
We're not going to solve this here. However, let's talk about something else, a big deal that came up in Trump's speech when he promised to use the government's vast powers to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. That was his quote. Now, that may be the promise that would directly affect all Americans, but prove to be the hardest to keep. Phil, what do you make of that? I mean, that's one of the ones where he'll be put to the test.
Absolutely.
Because people said, hey, everything's too expensive. You said you're going to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
It's easy to say.
But that is right up there with illegal immigration in terms of did you deliver on the promises that you made? And I think, signing an executive order telling everybody in the federal government, go find a way to reduce inflation, maybe sounds great, but it's going to be hard to implement. I think the heartbeat of inflation needs to be government spending too much, needs to come down and be within our ability to repay our debts, and two, the cost of energy. Regardless of what flavor of energy you want or like, that cost has got to come down because it affects everything across our economy.
I mean, this is going to be the tough one, right? I mean, I think all of us would agree, whether we debate immigration or any of these other issues or trans rights, the economy was the core, right? People wanted change in the economy, and inflation was what people felt the most. Inflation has already come down. I'm sure he'll start taking credit for it. It's already well below where it was the highest. But when he starts putting tariffs in place, which you've actually expressed some concern about, that's where we're going to start to see this inflation get tested, I think, again. So
he may decide to pump the brakes on that, for all we know, and say it was just a negotiating tool.
Yeah.
Finally, for this segment, the president also issued pardons to the January 6 rioters, including 15 from Maine, and even those who were convicted of committing violence against police officers or of violent sedition against the United States. Now, polling shows a majority of Americans oppose such sweeping pardons and commutations. Now, to borrow a phrase from FDR, January 6th was a day of infamy, and we all watched it unfold. We saw the violence and brutality happen because Donald Trump refused to accept the outcome of the 2020 election. The question is, Phil, is Donald Trump going to succeed in rewriting that history?
Well, I think he's going to have to get the facts from the departments that in many ways have been reluctant to be revealing what they have for information. He's going to have to present that to the American public, but it doesn't overshadow the fact that he pardoned 1,500 people who were involved in January 6th. And as we've talked about, and I'm certainly one who advocates that if you went in and you assaulted someone or you did physical damage to our property, no, you don't deserve a pardon. My understanding is there's, I forget the number so I won't quote it, a number of them that had commutations, which is different than...
but they're out of jail.
Yeah.
Right. They're just a handful that were like that, and those who had assaulted police officers did not get commutations. They were pardoned, and I think this is a good example coming back to what we were just talking about, which is that, you were saying earlier the American people wanted him to do this immigration stuff. The American people did not want him to do this, and he's doing it. So he's going against, but it was a promise that he made. So I think we all have a right to stand up to him and say, even if you made this promise for whatever purposes, we're going to oppose you when you do wrong. And this was clear. Even Susan Collins, who rarely comes out in this kind of forceful language, opposed this.
Well, 3 of the 4 members of our congressional delegation did offer statements. Jared Golden chose not to.
Yes, he chose to
We
sit on the
can't-
sidelines.
He said we can't keep reacting to everything Donald Trump does. I would argue this is pretty important.
Oh, no question about it. But if you, in contrast, if you look at what happened in Philadelphia, Minnesota, in Seattle, federal buildings were destroyed, people were killed. No one's been
Who was
prosecuted. In the riots that happened, you don't think there were people who were killed?
There were people shot by one of the people against the rioters. Kyle, whatever his last name was. But I mean, yes, certainly. But if you look at that, you don't say to yourself, oh, okay, it's okay if you try to stop the peaceful transfer of power. I mean, nobody in those things was ever pardoned. People were arrested, they went to jail if they committed violence, and Joe Biden never pardoned them.
It will be
Donald
interesting
Trump
to
did.
see how many Republicans speak up on this.
Right.
So, some who said after January 6th this is unconscionable now just kind of say nothing.